All right, we are recording. I believe
Looks like we are.
we're live. I think we're live, gang.
Is it working?
I hope so. Yep, we're working.
All right.
Chris,
So,
Dr. Chris, it's all yours.
all right. So how's it going, guys? My name is Dr. Chris Riedel. I'm a sports chiropractor, and I'm here with two gentlemen to talk about the immune system and eye health and a variety of topics, including vitamin D and the immune system. But right now what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce you to who I'm with. So I'm here with Dr. Cory Boudreaux. He's a Doctor of Optometry at Focal Point Eye Care, and Kirk Vidrine with VWell Solutions. He's a registered dietitian. And so we're going to start us off with a quick topic. We're going to start off with diet and the immune system. So my first question I just want to ask Kirk, just because you're a specialty. And for those of you that don't know, registered dietitians are the highest level of education for nutrition. So they're top of the bar. A lot of times in this world, we have a lot of food bloggers and stuff like that. And a lot of that doesn't mean any of them aren't knowledgeable, but it just shows there's different tiers to this. So Kirk, I just want to ask you, like a lot of times there's, with everything going on, what would you say is the most important thing people should know about diet when it comes to the immune system?
Well, to start off with, when it comes to studying, like nutrition researchers, when they're trying to figure out how nutrition is affecting the immune system, it's really, really difficult because there's so many different factors that come into play as whether your immune system is working. And so when trying to tease it out, there was one in particular, a good study that showed elderly people where your immune system is supposed to be depressed, and they were giving them different types of immunization shots, and they were testing to see what some of the markers for immune systems would be elevated depending on the type of diet that they had. And what was exciting is that the simplest thing, fruit and vegetable intake, for people who, I know, it's really sad that it's legitimately that simple, but when it came to people who ate more than 5 servings of fruits and vegetables, and a serving is about the size of your fist, they had an increase of more than 80% bump in their immune system response to the injections. So that's a marker that it tells us that simply getting more wholesome foods in seems to help with boosting the immune system. And then specifically, there's a couple things that have some promise. There's things that reduce inflammation. In particular, there's 2 herbs that seem to have enough scientific backing that you can say, hey, we think this might be useful. That's turmeric and cardamom. Both of those are fairly good. Nothing to go crazy over, but it wouldn't hurt to have in the diet more of. And then with that, there's some actual fruits and vegetables that are showing more than just promise. For example, broccoli, right? Good old-fashioned, everyday broccoli has been shown in humans, not just in animals, to increase a type of white blood cell that is like a superstar white blood cell. So it's a killer cell, and it's sort of like the frontline defense system for your white blood, for your immune system. And simply having an average of about a serving or so of broccoli within your day leads to a bump in that white blood cell actually going up. And it doesn't mean necessarily you won't get sick or anything else, but it's giving us a reason to believe that it could help you. And in fact, people that have had more than 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day also tend to miss work less and that sort of stuff. Now, there's confounding factors. They tend to be healthier people in general. They tend to have lower weights and less issues. But those things are promising. And one of the ones that I thought was really interesting was probiotics and prebiotics. So for people who don't know what that means, a probiotic is simply the good, healthy bacteria in your digestive tract, in your gut. And so when looking at that sort of stuff, probiotics do a lot of different things, but people who went on probiotic from doctors were supplementing probiotics. They did a study with this, and they showed a reduction in absenteeism due to 6 days. And so it seemed like that might be beneficial, but was it enough to start prescribing everybody take a probiotic pill? And the truth was it was not. It didn't cross the threshold that everybody needs to start taking probiotics. But that being said, there's something called a prebiotic. That's a big word that simply means fiber, right? So what do our good bacteria eat in our guts? It's mostly fiber and some other things. And it just so happens that fruits and vegetables and whole grains and that sort of stuff feed the healthy bacteria that could possibly boost your immune system and help prevent illness just in general. And all of those same foods typically knock down inflammation in the body all around. So all that science and all those studies and all that cool stuff basically comes down to eating your fruits and vegetables like your grandma will tell you the whole dang time.
So is there any, like, I think a lot of people ask this, there's any specific type or way to prepare them? Like, does it change whether or not you boil versus fry versus?
That's actually a great question. Obviously, when you fry anything, you're adding a lot of problems. Yes, it is delicious. I do like fried food. But there's some issues with frying foods that I think we all can consider. More calories, there's some types of fatty acid problems with that kind of thing. So no, frying it will definitely destroy most of what's good about it. But there was a study in kale. Kale has got some promise in vitro, so in a test tube essentially, for knocking down cancer cells, for knocking down some other markers of inflammation and that sort of stuff. We don't know how well it's going to work in humans, but it shows promise, and it shows promise whether it's raw or whether it's cooked. So at least in certain fruits and vegetables, that seems to be true. And if you looked across studies, like across large populations of people eat raw, they eat cooked, they eat a lot of different ways. And in America, the issue is not how we're getting our fruits and vegetables, it's the fact they're not getting any fruits and vegetables. The average American gets one and a half fruits and veg servings a day. That's what we average, and they count like French fries and ketchup as part of that. So we're not, nobody's overdoing apples. That just doesn't exist. So generally speaking, the recommendation is to get at least 5 fist-sized servings of fruits and vegetables or vegetables every day. But the research suggests that 7 to 13 servings might be optimal for health and weight control. That's a lot of fruits and vegetables. And one of the benefits of that, outside of they taste great if you cook them right, is that if you eat that many fruits and vegetables, you're probably going to shrink your waistline on accident, because that's so much healthy food that's so low in calories and low in glycemic index scores and all that stuff, that it's just going to crowd the plate out no matter what else you eat, even if you're eating po' boys and fried okra on the side, or fried shrimp on the side.
Yeah, all that fiber will fill you. Does it change, like if you were to recommend, like how should somebody, because we obviously have a situation where people don't like their vegetables.
Yeah.
If you were to talk about that, like how would you suggest somebody that's listening, how would you suggest they consume it and maybe make it a little bit more enjoyable?
Oh, see, so you're going to put me on a soapbox now. Can I get up? If you go around the world to all these wonderful food cultures, talk about Asia, talk about Latin America, talk about North Africa, talk about the Mediterranean, all of these food cultures, you say Italian food, French food, Spanish food, Greek food, these things are fantastic. They're loved, they're beloved, delicious, amazing food. And all of them are packed full of vegetables. So it's not that you can't do this right. It's just in America, we're very enriched grain and meat heavy. And that's what we sort of put a lot of our efforts in. But if you go to a fine dining restaurant, all the flavor comes from spices, herbs, fruits, and vegetables. Like the grains and the meats are sort of the plate for all the beautiful flavors that come out. So what I would suggest is very simply starting off with stuff that tastes really darn good. And if you can't figure that out, it's time for you to invest in a cookbook. And I can send a list of cookbooks. In fact, not even my cookbook, right? So I'll send out a list of other people's cookbooks that are simple and delicious and that aren't healthy or, granola, over the top, super nutrition stuff. They're just really good food that happens to have a lot of fruits and vegetables in it. You look across cultures around the world, it's packed full of fruits and vegetables, and they're all absolutely delicious. So cookbooks and chefs would be where I'd start with.
So what about somebody that's having difficulty with time? Maybe they don't have time to cook. Do you recommend like smoothies or?
Very good.
I'm not a big fan of juicers, but I'm sure.
No, so smoothie, when you're putting the whole fruit in, absolutely. So I'm kind of a foodie just in general. I cook way too much. And so I like doing that. And because of that, I'm sort of against putting like kale or spinach in a smoothie just because I have like an emotional issue with that. But
yeah, I do all the time.
I mean, you can, and typically you can drop spinach or a vegetable inside of a fruit smoothie, and it will blend away. You won't taste it. But I just have like a weird emotional thing. But making a homemade fruit smoothie at home is a really fast, great way for breakfast every day of the week. And then going, if you're eating on the go, there's places around town, any place you go, any Greek restaurant that you go to, a lot of Mexican restaurants you go to, you can find amazing vegetable side dishes and salads that are awesome, that you will absolutely love. They're fantastic. And when it comes to at home, where I would start, an incredible soups. Like, it's amazing what kind of soups are out there. And I have a recipe that I'll drop on I'll draw for everybody. It's a roasted bell pepper and tomato basil soup that takes less than 10 minutes to make. And it will blow your mind. Even your kids will love it. So when it comes to time, absolutely keep it simple and fresh, and just don't overthink it. So there's a lot of great cookbooks that help you to do that kind of thing. They can help you get a 15, 20-minute meal on the table that the kids will actually eat, that is absolutely delicious, and it'll make you lean on accident.
Yeah. I mean, those are excellent. Those would have a lot of antioxidants, right? Like a lot of those foods. And so, like, I think, Dr. Boudreaux, you were mentioning earlier that like antioxidants are really good for eye health.
Yeah, absolutely. We know the antioxidants are good for slowing down macular degeneration.
Really?
For those in our audience that don't know exactly what the macula is, it's the very back of the eye, very small part. But it's the part of the eye that we point our eye to when we're looking at something. So those antioxidants work wonders when talking about macular health.
Yeah. Is there what other nutrients or foods would you actually recommend for the eye?
Well, lutein, zeaxanthin, so some of the carotenoids,
Okay.
And all of this is part of what's called the ARED study, which is the age-related eye disease study. So we know about the lutein, the zeaxanthin, vitamin C, vitamin E, and zinc. So that kind of combination there promotes really good macular health. And I'm sure Kirk can kind of give us an idea of what foods
Yeah. So
we can get those from.
Yeah, so vitamin C, I mean, I know everybody wants to talk about vitamin C. I think one of the underappreciated ones would be zinc. But yeah, Kirk, so take those away, right? Roll with that.
Oh, goodness. I mean, most of those vitamins and minerals, and when you come to real whole, they tend to work better if they come from whole foods. And they're going to be found in just about all your natural plant-based foods that are whole grains or whole foods. So fruits, vegetables, beans and legumes, whole grains, oatmeals, and that sort of stuff. When it comes specifically to vitamin A or carotenoids and that sort of stuff, what you always heard, carrots are a good gold mine to go to, but just about most of your fruits and vegetables are going to have significant amounts of those in general. Minerals, it depends on what things are grown in, zinc and magnesium and some of these other minerals. I would actually kind of lean on Dr. Cory to see how often we see deficiencies in those. I actually don't know probably enough about that, particularly when it comes to eye health.
I think mostly you see deficiencies in your third world countries.
Okay.
But if there's a genetic component, or we know that macular degeneration is starting, then we up
the dosage.
The dosage on those. That's right. And a lot of these come in a prepackaged vitamin specifically for eye health.
Yeah. So on that's one of the things that I think is important when people talk about vitamins and minerals, is that you hear a lot about the benefits of these in certain situations, but people jumping to that conclusion without a doctor telling you that you need this is a bad idea. Certain ones will build up in your system. Certain ones don't have any effect, and supplement companies don't necessarily need to be ethical in the way that they deal with that. So somebody telling you that you have a deficiency, if you don't have a diagnosis of a deficiency for some reason, that doesn't mean that you do. And going out and then randomly buying, supplements of any sort and just taking them just because you think you heard it was a good idea is not a good idea. You need a doctor to let you know exactly what you should take and what your dosage is, which is appropriate for what you need to do. I see that when I was younger, I worked at I won't name the store, but I worked at a supplement store. And I saw that all the time, people coming in and just buying mega doses of various minerals and fat soluble vitamins and things like that, that if you can overdo these things and it can cause problems. So you need to talk to your doctor before you start just loading up on any of these supplements.
Yeah, you can find they have imaging studies where they're showing, just like you can see those GNC Mega Men pills, like just sitting in people's colons on imaging. It's pretty crazy. It's just not getting absorbed. So are there any generic supplements that you would recommend taking, or would you say almost any time you're considering supplementation, it should be due to the recommendation of a doctor? Or is there any
I'd say go talk to your doctor. I mean, the only, gosh, multivitamins tend to be the sort of generic, like go out there. And generally speaking, I think those are relatively safe and well tolerated and that sort of stuff. But then what type, how much is absorbed, et cetera, et cetera. I can tell you my kids take Flintstones. So, I mean, when you don't have a diagnosis of somebody who's got a vitamin deficiency or an excess in some way, shape, or form, if you don't know that you have an issue, you don't know that you have an issue. And so randomly taking a bunch of stuff is not. Now, it's not to say that back in the 1930s and 40s, we didn't have some serious vitamin deficiencies, and the multivitamin to just be a catch-all wasn't an important thing back then. But fortification has come a long way. With the American diet has changed in certain ways. I hate to say nothing, but what I do say is that don't go crazy on anything without talking to your doctor. At the very most, if you want to take a multivitamin, I think that's probably very safe, relatively speaking. Don't expect miracles from it. It definitely, there's research that says it doesn't do miracles. And if you think that you have an issue, if you have eye problems, if you have, you're not feeling good, you're tired, something else is going on, you need to talk to your doctor about those symptoms and see if they recommend you taking a supplement. But you should not just randomly start taking supplements without any prescription.
Yeah. I would actually piggyback out a lot of times when I ask patients about different supplements and if they're getting enough of this, that, or the other, and they respond, oh, well, I'm taking my multivitamin. I would also add that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not deficient. But that's a whole different conversation. But speaking about big ones, I think especially pertaining to the supplementation side of things, I think it's also for us to clarify like fat soluble versus water soluble vitamins.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't. So generally speaking, what that means is it's soluble just means what you need to break it down and absorb it. And water soluble vitamins are your B's and C's. So all your B vitamins and your C vitamins are water soluble. A, E, D, K, all the rest of them are what's called fat soluble. So you need to have fat in the meal for it to be absorbed well. And the issue with that is that most of the time, it's very difficult, particularly without supplementation, to overdo B's and C's just because the waters, you usually urinate it out. You typically get rid of it for the most part. It's possible to do that. It's just generally not a normal thing to see. Now, the fat soluble ones can be stored in your fat cells and can be built up over time. And that's where you have concerns with people who, it's hard to do with the way it can be done, but it's hard to do with just eating normal food to overdo that. But you can do that with supplementation. And so that's another reason why dosing is important. And that's why talking to your doctor to get a supplement that you trust actually has what's in the bottle, and get the right dosage for what's appropriate for you. So you don't, because even good things can be taken too far. Vitamin A is great, but Dr. Cory, do I remember my studies right that if you get too much, you can actually go blind? Am I correct on that?
I think that would be a whole lot. But yeah, there is a such thing as overdoing it. Absolutely. Vitamin A toxicity. And although I don't know the exact chemistry behind it too, but you've got to watch your smokers. Your smokers should not be taking vitamin A. That's gonna make things, I know, especially in the eye, worse. I don't know if you can speak to that at all.
Oh no, I actually don't know, but you're speaking to me, so tell us about that.
Yeah, keep me away from the eye.
No, but what is it? What's the link between smoking and vitamin A? How do they play off each other?
I'm not sure the exact chemistry of the science behind it, but one of the questions we ask our patients that have macular degeneration is, do you smoke? And if they say yes, we make sure they find a vitamin supplement or an eye supplement that does not have vitamin A. or beta carotene.
Yeah, see, that's another point that that doesn't come up. If you have some other underlying condition, or you have a lifestyle factor that plays some sort of chemical effect in these things, it can throw off what the guy at the supplement store is telling you to do, even if he was right. Even if a nutritionist was right and had the right concept, if they don't have your whole medical history, you could get yourself in trouble just because that's right for most people, but it's not right for you. It's one more reason that you should talk to a doctor about it and not just start taking it off the top.
Yeah, a couple big ones, omega-3s, they have an anticoagulative effect. So if you're taking blood thinners and stuff like that, there's a lot of interactions at play. So talking about like toxicity and stuff, one of the big vitamins that's been in the headlines recently, because there's some correlational evidence with vitamin D and COVID-19, which we're not going to go near that. But like vitamin D, right? So I've been seeing certain, you have certain podcast hosts or whatnot. Like I've heard people talking about upwards of 4,000 IU supplementing per day, right? And recommending that. So, from what I've read, it's about like 4,000 is the upper limit. But as we were saying, that's fat soluble. So what would you recommend pertaining to like vitamin D supplementation or something like that? Kirk.
Oh gosh, you threw me that one. No, I'm going to stay completely away from that because I don't know enough about that research to speak to it. I've been very interested in that because I know Dr. Cory is going to talk a little bit about vitamin D and general eye health, and I'm curious as to what the mechanisms. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know enough about vitamin D supplementation to suggest any level whatsoever outside of going outside for 15 minutes a day to get sunshine. That would be my number one recommendation, but I don't know enough about it. Apologies. I now have 3 days of research that you just told me. I'm going to be studying vitamin D for the next 3 days.
Well, it's just something that I've seen recommended. And for me, I find that to be a little bit more, that's one of the big ones that I think is important. You need to make sure that you're deficient. If you have somebody that's not that's like outside tanning and then taking 4,000 IU, that is one that can be toxicity. So that's just something I was kind of noticing. It's only something I heard on it's on a couple podcasts where they like talking about that stuff. But yeah, so that transitions me. I kind of wanted to go into vitamin D, and then I know Cory, you were telling me that vitamin D is really good for the eye. So I was wondering if you could piggyback that.
Well, and we're not talking about deficiency here, but what we're actually talking about is nearsightedness in kids.
Okay.
And what we're starting to see and learn from these studies is that vitamin D may slow down the progression of nearsightedness in kids. Okay. And that's important because as kids get more and more nearsighted, the eyeball gets longer and longer, and there comes some intrinsic health concerns with the eye because of that. So we're not recommending taking supplements for vitamin D, but we are recommending an hour of outside time a day for kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big things, and I think, to clarify all this, is like there's a balance with certain vitamins and certain supplements. Like I think the ideal always is to get it in your diet and to go outside for 15 minutes. It's really not much, just 15 minutes a day. And I mean, that'll help with nearsighted too, just in general, because they're not staring at their tablets.
Exactly.
Remember you were mentioning something about tablets and nearsightedness. Sorry, my dog is like coming at me.
Well, yeah. So, we're trying to curb how quickly kids are getting nearsighted. And of course, almost every school has computers now, and every kid is on a computer all day. I know my kids are. So, we're telling parents anything outside of schoolwork, limit that screen time to an hour a day. That near work, whether it's a screen or whether it's a book, just that near work, it's going to drive kids nearsighted. And so, we need to take more breaks every 20 minutes, take a 20-second break and look 20 feet away. We call it the 20-20-20 rule. Only an hour of screen time outside of schoolwork, and again, accompanied with an hour of outside time a day. And that's kind of the way we're trying to curb this myopia progression. And then, of course, we have other ways to kind of start curbing it too.
So, all the dads that are taking their kids golfing are happy right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, you mentioned the other ways to handle, I think you said myopia. So what would the other ways be that you offer?
Well, we're kind of getting away from diet here with
Just roll with it.
this
We'll come
topic,
back.
but we're putting these corneal molds. We're putting these little molds on the eyeball that the kid sleeps with, and it reshapes the front part of their eye. The great thing for the kid is when they wake up in the morning, they take the molds out. They can see clearly all day long with no glasses and no contact lenses.
Really?
That's great for the kid. But from my standpoint, it's slowing down the rate of myopia and, really reducing the risk for future problems later on.
So by myopia, you mean?
Nearsightedness. Myopia is another word for nearsightedness. That's right.
I just want to make sure for all us people that don't know all the terms. So you guys are actually using molds and stuff like that, and you're actually able to make it so kids that are suffering. So is there a specific age range that you recommend this, or?
Well, the kid has to be motivated and responsible enough, but we've seen them fit as young as 6.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so 6 years old, and you're talking about a situation where a kid's already nearsighted, and you're able to actually potentially slow that down, if not
Slow it down drastically. Yeah.
drastically. Okay, that's really awesome. It's kind of something you could see, if it is something that people would become aware about. I don't see why it wouldn't be as popular as like braces or something like that.
It takes some effort to get it installed into your office setting. And it's not taught a whole lot in the schooling, so you got to get some experience outside of the school doing it. But once it's installed and once it's going, you really see it work wonders for your
And
patients.
this is something that's relatively unique to your practice, right?
I wouldn't say I'm the only guy doing it, but there's very, very few of us out there doing it.
No big deal, right?
Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of good eye doctors in town, and they're just doing the glasses and the contacts and the general eye health, and they do a great job at that. But it's kind of a personal thing for me too, because growing up, my eyes were getting worse every year, and my eye doctor just gave me a new prescription every year. Okay, now he probably didn't know about this yet, so it's okay. But I want to do a little bit more for my patients, make sure they, have a good chance not ending up like I was and really, really nearsighted by the time I'm in high school.
Yeah, I can imagine that's something that's still happening at pretty intense rates at some of those higher volume, or I don't know how you describe them, kind of the more chain type optometrist places.
Yeah, they're probably geared to more just the glasses and contacts, But my deal was mostly a genetic issue. We're dealing with so much more now. Everything we do is on these tablets and phones. The near work is just so much more than it used to be. So as a nation, as a society, we're all just driving ourselves more and more nearsighted.
I see that you mentioned being outside for an hour and being away from the screens more. And isn't it funny that when you start looking around at what makes people healthier, happier, and live longer and better, it's still all fairly typical prescriptions, right? Eat better food, get out and play and hang out with other people. There's enough evidence that simple stuff is extremely powerful, if not for prescriptive treating problems, at least preventing a lot of the issues from becoming. And it's simple stuff. It's not rocket science when it comes to that. Molding eyes, rocket science. Going out and play because it's good for you, maybe not so much, just in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that it's kind of funny you say that, because that's probably like one of the most common recommendations I make in my office is go for a walk. Literally, it's just like, all right, take a break, go for a walk. Like, it's probably the best rehab. And I don't care what debate you're having within the rehab world. Like, for probably 60% of causes of low back pain, going for a walk is probably one of the most beneficial things. But it's also just the activity. It's just movement. It's like, get yourself moving, stop. And that's one of the big things I think we're seeing right now is we just have too many people are just stuck at their desk. And I almost think the quarantine, people being at home, has made it so it's actually been more more frequently. Less people are out of their house, stuff like that.
Yeah, so we work, play, and travel, all of it sedentary, which is, we didn't, Chris, am I right? I thought I saw a number where it said something like 80% of Americans will have a significant bout of back pain in their life. Is that true?
Yes.
Jeez, 80%.
Yes.
That's terrible.
Mm-hmm. I think it all kind of depends on the way you look at it too, though. I think a lot of the time we sit there and we analyze like 80% of people have low back pain, or, there's some studies, the amount of money, I wish I had it off the top of my head, the amount of money that people spend in America on low back pain is insane. It's one of the top. We're talking about billions of dollars on low back pain. I would actually make the argument that a lot of it is healthcare providers' fault. A lot of it is we're over-prescribing, over-imaging, all these variables, and we're taking something that, in my opinion, I almost think like, okay, 80% of people have low back pain. We're showing if I take an MRI of a 50-year-old, even if they have no pain at all, there's a 50% chance I'm going to find a disc bulge, or degenerative changes, which are age-related changes. It's like finding gray hair in your spine, right? And so we wouldn't say because somebody has wrinkles that they have degenerative face disease. So I'm not sure why we say it's degenerative, disc disease and stuff like that.
I have no wrinkles at all, and they're never going to be there. So I wouldn't know what you're talking about there.
Yeah, you got the best hair in the group. So there's
so that's true too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, look, so since you're the specialist in that, what do you do if you have to work at home right now at COVID? Like if you have to sit at your job for 10 hours a day, like how do you not get back pain?
Good question. 80%, we got a losing battle already, right? I think part of it is realizing that pain is not necessarily what we expected. It's not like, oh, I hurt, therefore there was something wrong with me. It's a situation where it's more your body's just talking to you. Listen to it. Listen to your body. If you've been sitting for too long and your back is hurting you, get up. Stop sitting for too long. And I think, a lot of times we sit there and we obsess about posture. We obsess about all this stuff. And I'll preface, there is no perfect posture. But, when you look at it, one of the most important things is we have people waking up first thing in the morning, say 6 a.m., all right? They wake up, they go downstairs, they sit on their computer, they check their emails, and they, relaxed work, right? And then they prepare, and then they're working at like, say, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and then they're working all the way to 5 o'clock, and they're still sitting there. And then they stay there afterwards to kind of look at Facebook or whatever, relax. Sometimes people like to look at the computer while they relax. So you're talking about, or you have people that have it, it's hard to set boundaries while people are at home with work. So you have people, I've had multiple patients where it's like, they just sit there and they just work. They can't stop because it's like, they haven't created that because they're at home. They haven't found that work-life balance because it's established when you drive home. So honestly, the biggest thing is stand up every 45 minutes. And if you didn't stand up that 45 minutes, stand up every 2 hours. Like just stand up whenever you get a chance and do some basic, you can do some arm circles, reach to the ceiling. Even the smallest thing, even getting up for a minute helps. On that note, there are good things you can do pertaining to ergonomics. Ergonomics are really important. A lot of the businesses are paying attention to it. That's another thing I notice a lot of problems. People are sitting there working from home for 8 hours in a stool at their like kitchen bar. And that's a one-way recipe to having to see me, because it's just, you're just sitting there and you're this hunched over posture that's just not normal. But I always say when we're talking about ergonomics, I have an actual self-assessment that I can send people, and I send it to all my desk workers, stuff like that. So that way they can assess how their ergonomics are. But I always like to tell people there's a simple way to look at it. It's the rule of 90 degrees. Almost every part of you needs to be at 90 degrees. You want your screen in front of your face so that you're not looking up. You want it at an appropriate distance, generally at least a foot, right? More than that, I would recommend. But you generally want to have an actual keyboard, like a wireless keyboard. These are some of the simple things you can do at home, is like use an actual monitor, have a wireless keyboard, and then you want your elbows at what's the degree? You want your hips to be at 90 degrees. You want your knees to be at 90 degrees. Sometimes people will put something for their feet to kind of like stack their feet up, but that's kind of going down the rabbit hole a little bit. But realistically, if you're just upright, hips at 90, elbows at 90 degrees, you have a keyboard. You don't want to, if you're on your laptop, that's generally not that, and you can get a keyboard for relatively cheap. If you're going to be on your phone a lot, getting a headset is really important. So you're not sitting like this all the time trying to type. And I'm sure anyone watching probably does that all the time. Yeah, that's generally, in a lot of sites, there's like ergonomic chairs nowadays, there's ergonomic things, but pertaining to your actual low back, the big thing I also recommend is just pretending you have a tail and keeping it untucked. So if you notice, if you're sitting, if you had a tail, if you're sitting on your tail, then that's a situation where you're probably loading your spine a little bit more than you need to.
So I have two questions then.
That was a lot. That was a lot.
A lot came up. I had two things. First, Dr. Cory, what is the proper distance that you should be at from your computer screen? Because I think everybody wants to know that.
Well, the average distance that people look at things is about 16 inches. Okay, there probably isn't a number of where that computer screen should be. Really, it's, I wouldn't put it any closer than 16 inches for sure. Mm-hmm. But really, it's the amount of time you're staring at that screen or that distance. You just need more breaks.
Yeah.
Didn't you said every 20 minutes, right?
We said every 20 minutes, but I'll take that hour. If somebody will give me that hour, stand up, stretch, and look away.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of times I probably negotiate too much with people, realistically, 20 minutes. Like the key is, and as I said, there's no perfect posture. It's just about movement. If you're in one position for too long, that position will get sensitized and that will lead to pain. So if you can just keep moving and finding ways, like it's okay if you sit on your tail a little bit, like that's okay. It's not going to be, I'm going to hurt. You just need to keep moving and finding comfortable positions and standing up, maybe go for a couple walks, right? You used to just getting up like every quarter of the day, like every couple hours, and just walking around your house a little bit will go a long way. The big problem is right now we're really seeing people not moving for 8 hours, and that's going to cause issues.
Well, that brought me to the other thing was that what do you think about stand-up desks? Like, what's your opinion on them?
I think stand-up desks are great. There's always going to be people arguing within the research about like good versus bad, like, is sitting bad for you, stuff like that, or is it just the fact that you're not moving for a prolonged period of time? Mm-hmm. So will people not have low back pain because of a standing desk? It's probably still going to happen if you're standing for 8 hours. Military cadets get pain when they stand just as much as somebody that's sitting all day. But does that mean that based on the research I've read, the loads on the spine when you're in a standing position are less, so it will put less pressure on your spine? But I think the answer still stands. I actually would most prefer one that moves, so you can kind of stand for part of the day, you can sit for part of the day. But I still don't think anything replaces just taking a break and going for a walk. That's probably the best thing. But certainly, if we were to say which would I prefer, a standing desk versus sitting, it would definitely be standing.
And I was curious about that because I had some issues with low back pain years ago, and then I got a stand-up desk that can move up and down, so I'd sit and stand, and it made a difference. But going along with that, I had just gone across a research. We were talking about immune system and nutrition. It turns out that physical activity may be even more powerful just in general. It was a study, I'm looking at my notes here. It said that people who were in the experimental group were asked to walk, just simply what you just said, walking, right? 30 minutes a day on average, and they dropped their incidence rate of sick days from 50% to 20%. So a 30% drop in the amount of sick days are being taken simply by going for a 30-minute walk a day. So my question to you is, when it comes to physical, and Dr. Cory, please, if you got something to add to this, particularly with eye health, is how much are we recommending that's reasonable but effective? So I think those two things are important. It's something that Americans can do. It's not going to be asking them to go work out for 3 hours a day in the gym, but it still gives you a legitimate bang for your fitness buck. How often should we be physically active? Is there a better way to be physically active? Like, what should we do?
Oh man, that's a tough question. First off, I'll say the immune system part of physical activity is huge, right? So when you break down muscle doing weightlifting, you're utilizing your immune system actually to break down the muscle. So what you're doing is you're actually going to strengthen your immune system during that rebuilding, because you're tearing the muscle. You're creating micro trauma to the muscle, which then the immune system comes and it will heal it. right? And then build it up stronger, hopefully, right? But so what happens, your immune system actually becomes a lot stronger. However, if you overtrain, or say you're feeling like you're getting sick and then you go to the gym and, you know, have a crazy leg day or something like that, your immune system will actually be down because it's working on multiple things. So there's a balance there where a little bit of healthy activity, if you're trying to get over a cold, if you're kind of at the end of a sickness and you go for a light aerobic exercise where you get your heart rate up, that's actually gonna have a beneficial effect. But if you do too much, it's going to have a recovery and it'll actually kind of cause your immune system to have to work. Pertaining to the amount, I've thought about this a lot, what's the ideal amount of exercise? And it is very situational. If you're talking about like healthiness in your spine, like overall, I recommend most people, the simplest thing that I recommend is to walk again. It gets your heart rate elevated. It's prolonged. It's easy on the body. A lot of times people want to run, and if they haven't run for years, and so they go out and they want to go run a mile, and their body hasn't done that. So that adaptive process actually takes time. And the benefit of it it's not like you're still going to get a good metabolic activity from going for a walk. But if we're talking about pure injury prevention, generic strength programs are really up there. It's like the most recent study I read was about stretching decreases injury risk by about 4%. Compared to strength training at 64% in specific fancy rehab, which I'll give plenty of to people, was about 40%. So if you combine, I mean, my idea would be combine generic strength training with some fancy stuff to increase that even higher. But there's a balance there. And I think sometimes we overthink that standard gym model. I think is fine for the people it works for, but a lot it doesn't. Which is why some of my rehab is targeted towards being just simple stuff with maybe a kettlebell. Like you have to be able to squat. That doesn't mean you have to put 400 pounds on your back. You can grab a 20, 30 pound kettlebell and just do some light squats, and it's functional. But the other thing is, if you can't squat or deadlift, how are you going to lift anything? If you ever want to lift something that weighs over 20 pounds, you have to train that in an environment, or else your back will probably hurt afterwards because it's not used to that. So that's why I personally am a huge fan for just the average person that's just trying to do something, would be maybe 2 to 3 times a week with a light kettlebell or just 20 pounds, just doing something. It doesn't have to be the 45-minute you're dying, because you're going to be sore the next day either way. You could do 20 minutes and be fine, as long as you're consistent and you're working on building that habit, and then maybe you going for some walks throughout the week as well. That's generally what I would recommend. I hope that's not too much word vomiting on you guys.
I mean, I think that's so at least 20 minutes, a couple times a week, doing some type of weightlifting strength training, even if it's at home.
Even if you're a runner. Even if you're a runner. The most performance enhancing thing for runners is actually weightlifting.
The problem is that runners don't want to weightlift.
No, they don't. They are overrepresented in most physical therapy and chiropractic clinics.
Well, so Doc, Cory, you said you get your kids to go play for an hour a day outside? Because if you
Did I say I get mine to go? No.
I want to know exactly which tactics you're using to get your kids to play outside.
No, we know my 2 daughters are vitamin D deficient, actually. I think it's more of a genetic component to that than anything else. But no, believe me, I'm not saying it's easy to get the kids to put the devices down and go play outside. But I would love to see it happen a lot more. And I think we need it to happen. And it's a topic for a whole nother time, but we just,
we
these devices these devices have so many ways of, so many unhealthy things about them.
Yeah, they tap into that. They tap into all of our reward systems.
Yes.
It's just
Yes. And when you were talking about that 30-minute walk, all I could think of was when you see these people walking those tracks at a park, and they're on their phone the whole time.
So
I mean, put a good podcast on, put it in your sleeve. I mean, get off the screen.
So there's a funny game. I haven't found it, but I think you guys enjoy it. Cassie was telling me about it. Apparently there's a game you can put on your phone and it's like Zombie Run. And so like whenever you go for a walk or a jog, it'll play and it tells you like a zombie story. Like
What?
while you're walking, or yeah, it's like it like narrates like you're, and all of a sudden you have to like run from the zombies or like walk from the zombies. Yeah, you have to like collect stuff for a mission. So like the further you go, you like collect more objects for the mission.
Gamification of walking.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Got to make it interesting.
No,
You do.
more power to you. That's just, hey, food's got to taste good. Play has got to be fun. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Doc, what other questions you got for us today?
Oh man. I don't know. I guess I'd say like right now, do you have anything like pertaining to the immune system, any dietary stuff that you feel like we haven't covered at this time?
Oh, that we haven't covered? No, I would suggest just as a basic, when it comes to that, you're trying to reduce inflammation and you're trying to increase the immune system. And both of those are done in whatever part you can by being more physically active, getting out in the sun more as two big parts of it, and then eating more real food, more fruits and vegetables in particular, and lots more than we currently do now. So at least 5 up to 7 to 13 servings of any type of fruit and vegetable. It doesn't matter what type of fruit and vegetable it is. I know there's a lot of debates over fruits being too high in sugar or whatever else, and that's a topic we can cover another day. But generally speaking, all of those are just not accurate. We don't eat nearly enough fruits and vegetables. Nobody's overweight because they have an apple addiction. That doesn't exist. We need far more of it in our diet. It will make you lean, it will make you healthy. Just lots of fruits and vegetables, beans and legumes, whole grains, nuts and seeds. Power plants all over the place.
What about like juices? What about like a glass of OJ in the morning?
So that's a good question, right? With the vitamin C stuff. So like when people ask about vitamin C and your immune system, and does it stop you from getting sick? And the truth is, when I left grad school, that was still a very hot debate. And part of the issue was that when they would run some of these tests, it was hard to know who was being exposed to the virus and who was not. There was ethical reasons for that, as to whether or not they were going to get sick or not get sick versus whatever else. So it was not a founded, set in stone science when I left. And that was about a decade ago when I finished grad school. But still, they were still very uncertain if that was right. When it comes to juicing in certain like orange juice and grape juice have had some beneficial studies that have been shown for heart health and possibly some other things. None of it is as good as real fruits and vegetables. It just isn't. There's, Jack LaLanne got on years ago saying we're just going to get 8 servings of fruits and vegetables straight through juices. You lose all of the fiber, which is a major benefit to the fruits and vegetables, and a number of other things through the processing of it, and you keep all of the calories. So I tell everybody, you can easily drink 300 calories of orange juice. You can't eat 6 oranges right off the bat, 5, 6 oranges. It isn't going to happen. So it's not that I don't think juicing is okay. A little bit of juice in the morning is fine. It's never as good as the whole fruit for lots of different reasons, including how the calories are absorbed and its effects with the fiber and all the other things. Real fruit is going to win out. If you want to have a little juice here and there as a part of your diet, it's not hurting you as long as you're not overdoing the calories, but you're not replacing real whole full fruits and vegetables with the juice. It's not going to happen that way. You need the real stuff. But you can puree it in a smoothie. That works fine. You keep all the good stuff that way. So drink a smoothie. Yeah, God bless.
Yeah. And then Cory, did you have any final things that we might not have missed, especially pertaining to like diet, eye health, and or just myopia in general, nearsightedness? Because I feel like nearsightedness is probably the biggest thing we're going to face, especially as quarantine goes on and as we find this new normal.
Yeah. Not so much there, but when Kirk was talking, I had a question for him.
Cool.
I know a doctor in town that measures free radicals.
Mm-hmm.
And really believes in that as far as the immune system. Do you have any knowledge about that?
I mean, for free radicals, for people who don't know, it's just stuff that's going around and breaking down the body. We consider them bad things. And antioxidants are supposed to be the counter effect of free radicals out there. As far as do I know any detailed research on that, not enough to speak to. Generally speaking, when it comes to just everything that I see is when they put supplements up there to try and knock it down, that's not medication. There's just the effects are meager at best. And when you take a look at people's diets, the whole foods seem to be more impactful. And when you do epidemiological studies and you're looking at large clusters of people, those who tend to have a lot more whole plant-based foods tend to do better as far as their how many diseases they get and how well they and how long they live and that sort of stuff. But not enough to speak highly to it.
And Chris, the only other thing I would say is, with all this computer work we're doing, and especially if we end up homeschooling again at some point this year, when we're staring at these screens, we blink less. And when we blink less, the eyes get dry. So going back to nutrition, one thing that really helps dry eyes, omega-3s.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you hit on that a little bit, Kirk, but fish oils versus flaxseed oil,
right.
Getting it straight from eating cold water fish.
Right.
Thoughts there?
Well, so just for everybody who's watching doesn't know, omega-3s is a subcategory of a type of fat called polyunsaturated fatty acids. Big giant word. It's mainly oils. So you have what's called omega-6s and omega-3s. And the diet for most Americans and for most people around the world, omega-6s and 3s 200 plus years ago were pretty even. They were about the same. And the reason that's important is because omega-6s, omega-3s, they build something called an eicosanoid, which is just a precursor to different hormones. And so what the research is showing is that omega-6s, omega-3s, they build antagonistic hormones. So one increases blood pressure, one decreases blood pressure, one increases blood clotting, one decreases, so forth and so on. It doesn't make one good or one bad. It just means they're supposed to work in concert with each other. And today's modern diets, the omega-6 levels have gone through the roof and omega-3 levels have tanked to the point where it's about 16 to 1 or worse in certain diets. And so we did some research in that at LSU when I was there. We were studying omega-3s and brain health and different things. And what we saw when we tanked this was in animals, but when we tanked omega-6s to be very low with omega-3s, it was not beneficial. But when we brought omega-3s up, there were some beneficial effects of that. So generally speaking, there's a couple different types of omega-3s. There's ALA, DHA, and EPA, another big words, but basically ALA is the one that doesn't have any effects, and that's found in flax seeds and plant-based products. So it's not that flax seeds and flaxseed oil can't be healthy for you. It just doesn't have the effects of the other omega-3 fatty acids that is typically found in cold water fish. And that's partially from their diet, and it's partially because the water that they're sitting in is cold, which causes them to build more fat. It's intramuscular fat in their cells. All that being said, what that means is that getting fish in and getting omega-3 from either krill or what fish eat or from fish itself can have some benefits, particularly for heart patients, people who've already had a heart attack. There's a 10% reduction in a second heart attack if you get omega-3s in. So we believe there's a lot of potential here, but unfortunately, the supplementation has not shown to be as effective as the actual fish, and we don't know why. At least to my knowledge, we don't currently know why that is, and maybe that's different when it comes to moisture of the eye. I don't know any research about that, but I know for most of the things that we talk about for benefits, whether it's metabolism or brain health or heart health or anything else that has to do with omega-3 fatty acids, eating the fish itself seems to be more beneficial than taking the capsules, but capsules may still have some benefits. And the levels are typically, when you take like a capsule form, a supplement, which you're gonna look at the back of the bottle, it'll say EPA and DHA towards the bottom, and you want it to be at least 30% of the omega-3s. So usually you'll have a capsule that's 1,000 milligrams. So the combination of EPA and DHA should be at least 300 milligrams. A lot of times it'll go up to like 600. And what the studies say is you want to get at least 300 and upwards of 1,000 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids in your diet or through a capsule form to have any sort of effect. So that's usually 1 to 3 capsules a day if you can take capsule form, or about 3 ounces of fish 3 times a week.
For dry eye, we're trying to get them up to 2,000.
2,000. Wow. So yeah, I don't know the research behind that. But what I do know is the only people that I ever heard of who's ever taken too many omega-3s in are Eskimos, and the worst problems they have from that is excessive nosebleeds. So it seems to be relatively safe, assuming that the fish is not, polluted in some sort of way. So generally speaking, getting more of that fish in, the only issue, because it tastes delicious, is just that it's sometimes more expensive. And you want to get the fatty fish like tuna, salmon, cod, more so than catfish.
Are there any concerns of like, I mean, I haven't looked into any of this stuff, but like mercury?
Yeah, I mean, there's always concerns when it comes to that. But what we typically say is that if you're not pregnant or expecting, if you're not in a population that is immune deficient or elderly or very young, it's not a huge concern compared to like a risk to reward ratio. But they do suggest that you rotate your fish. So not just fish from the same place all the time. So not just shark, not just salmon, not just tuna. You should just rotate it to get whatever. If there's a pollutant and it's coming in, it's at least rotated out. And then the real shame of it is that the farm stuff is typically considered less likely to have mercury or something in there, but it's also less likely to have omega-3s in there. So you're kind of, you're playing with both of them.
So
my opinion, go ahead.
So I was going to say, so the bodybuilder diet of hot sauce and tilapia might not be the every day, all day, might not be the best.
I mean, I like hot sauce and I eat tilapia. But I mean, we know for lots of different reasons that variety is important. Part of that is to avoid excessive inputs of some sort of toxin from anything, whether it's chicken or a same vegetable or whatever else. A good example of that is spinach, right? So spinach is like a superfood. Like everybody thinks spinach is awesome, but it also has a chemical in it that if taken too much of it, increases your chances of getting a kidney stone. So eating bucket loads of even spinach could be, could cause a problem. But that being said, rotating foods. You shouldn't have all the same foods. You should rotate your proteins, you should rotate your starches, you should rotate your vegetables as much as reasonably possible. In every way, shape, or form, we think that not only makes it safer as far as what you get in, but also probably improves its benefit as far as health concerns and different nutrients playing off each other. Another example, to be hard to get into another day, but they were looking at different vegetables and its benefits towards different cancers. And it showed that some vegetables were not beneficial at all for these cancers, but it was really beneficial for another. And it flipped it and it was the exact opposite for different types of cancers. So the bottom line is there isn't one perfect food. You should absolutely eat as much variety as possible.
And all of these like negatives that are being discussed are nothing compared to eating a cheeseburger every day.
Agreed. Yeah, we're going into a rabbit hole. We're not. Americans are not having a problem with too much vegetable intake.
They're not over consuming spinach, I don't think.
No.
I do think sometimes maybe we do have in the female world, especially young female athletes, but like not enough iron.
Agreed. Yeah. So that because of their menstrual cycle that happens, and just getting more just lean protein and from animal products typically fixes that because the type of iron from those are more readily absorbed. And surprisingly, cooking in black pots. So the old school Cajun black pot, right? Yeah. So if you have like a cast iron skillet or pot, which I think is the greatest thing in the world. They last forever. They're amazing. They conduct heat really well. They're fantastic. But some of the iron will actually leach out of the black pot into it, particularly if you use a little bit of citrus. So if you put any type of citrus juice into the pot, it helps for some of it to leach into the food. So if you're a female in a, from teenage years on to your later 40s and 50s, and you feel like on a regular basis, maybe you're having a little bit of anemia because you don't have enough iron in your diet, or you don't eat a whole lot of meat or protein, then yeah, it might be useful to cook in a black pot, eat a little more animal products, or talk to your doctor and get an iron supplement just in general. That's another one. So I've known people who've had issues with low iron, women who have low iron, and they've just gotten a supplement from their doctor that's helped out. So I didn't want to disparage supplements altogether. There's a time and place for supplements.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but for iron being a good one, you can easily overdo iron, and there's drawbacks to overdoing iron as well. So again, that's one where if your diet isn't perfect or it's not perfect for you, that's where a doctor can come in and tell you what you need to do.
That's another one that's based on a blood test as well.
Yeah. Yeah. An actual test.
Yeah, instead of just a ballpark. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that because a lot of times we've been talking about all the benefits of plant-based nutrition and stuff like that. And one of the big things that we do have to pay attention to for, certain specific populations is the B12 and the iron.
Right. Yeah. So plant-based is just a new catchword for veganism. So being a vegan. So you'll see in dietary circles, like the fight between low carb and low fat has been like 80 years running at this point in time. And they take different names. Like there was the Stone Man diet, became the paleo diet. The keto diet was the Atkins diet. It's keto again. And then, vegan diet was the low fat diet, the vegan diet, and now it's plant-based diets. And none of them are perfect in and of itself, but if plant-based diets have a lot of evidence that they're very beneficial, but they do have some issues, and not the least of which is vitamin B12. And if you're deficient in B12 for a significant period of time, that could affect you and or your children if you could become pregnant and have children. So there's a specific type of B12 that you should probably take, and you may need injections, and all that should be told to you by your doctor. But if you're going to do a plant-based diet, or if you're going to go vegan, you need to watch out to make sure you get enough iron and B12, and you talk to somebody before you do that.
So here's a question, because we talked about omega-3s a lot, and we just talked about like veganism and stuff like that. What would you recommend for somebody that's a vegan, would you feel, for pertaining to omega-3s? Because they probably wouldn't want to consume fish or a fish product.
Right, just krill. Algae. I'm sorry, algae. Algae oil will have omega-3 fatty acids in there. Yeah.
Okay.
So I said flax oil, and flax meal. They don't have the right type of omega-3s because it doesn't convert properly in the body, but a small amount does convert. So getting some in can. Now flax seeds are not digestible, so you're not going to get the omega-3s from it. So you would need to use the flax meal itself or the oil, and it won't be nearly as good an impact, but you'll get a little bit from it. Yeah. But generally speaking, I think algae would be
okay.
if you were vegan.
Absolutely. I think the same thing a lot of times they're recreating, like protein. A lot of times there's a myth that if you don't have animal-based proteins, you're not going to get your necessary.
That's not true.
Yeah, your body breaks it down.
Yeah, then there's enough cultures out there that have basically lived in practically vegan diets and have been fine. There's combinations of how proteins work together, or amino acids work together to make complete proteins over your day. You could be a vegan and get plenty of protein. There's vegan bodybuilders out there who are doing just fine and put me to shame in how much they can lift and how muscular they are. So I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, they do pretty well. They do pretty well. You have a lot of professional athletes that are doing it right now. I think most recently there was a strongman that won the championship that was a vegan.
Is that right?
I believe so. It might not be this year. Don't quote me on it 100%, but one of my good friends from school is a vegan, and he always sends me all his vegan propaganda.
There is a lot of that. Yeah, it can get a little out of hand. I mean, I generally think of when you talk about a scale of diets that are out there, and there's so many, oh my gosh, and then they can get so angry when people are talking about various diets. And I think vegan diets are definitely heading in the right direction, and if done properly, can be one of the healthiest diets in the world. So I think that's a good thing. Like everything, you can be a Cheetos vegetarian, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, so, he would make pizza without cheese, and that would be his pizza without cheese or just a potato mashed, and then that would be dinner. It was funny. It was in chiropractic school, so it's okay.
There you go.
Question for you though: do you feel like is there any dietary things that people should pay attention to with this new? If you go to a Sprouts or a Trader Joe's or anywhere, there's some really cool and reasonably priced meat alternatives. Have you noticed or read anything as a negative or anything that people should be concerned about with these? Or are they just
Right.
I don't know anything about it. I'm just asking.
Well, most meat alternatives, and I'm not sure about the Impossible Burger. I'm not sure what that's made out of, but a lot of previous meat alternatives were made from soy. And soy has been shown to be very beneficial in most cultures, particularly in Asia, as having like heart health benefits and different things. But there is a concern, and I don't know how founded it is, but there's a concern of excessive soy intake increasing estrogen levels. Now, I don't know enough about the research to say if that concern is legitimate, but I would imagine it would take a lot of soy products to do it. My biggest concern is the idea that a product like that, something that has been processed heavily and changed from its natural form to something else, being looked at initially as automatically a healthy food. And I'm not sure that it would always cross those barriers. And a lot of times with many things that are that would be considered healthy in its natural form, when you take it and you completely change how it is made and you add things to it and you put preservatives and different things in there, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to be healthy, but a lot of times a lot of the health properties leave from it. So my only concern with that probably be is excessive intake. If you decide that a meat replacement sausage or burger is now so healthy that you can eat 5 pounds of it a day and there's not going to be a problem, I think that would be an issue. Or if it stops, it replaces the rest of the food. In fact, just to go in there, is meat and a problem? There's research about meat and cancer in certain studies where higher countries that eat meat tend to have more intestinal cancers. But when they cross-reference that with high fruit and vegetable intake, the cancer rates go away. So it may not be necessarily that you're eating a lot of meat, but that if meat is pushing fruit and vegetables off the table and you're not eating a lot of fruits and vegetables to counter the issues, that may be a bigger problem. So something like a meat substitute, what I would worry about is that would take the place of real fruits and vegetables and good healthy food, and you'd be eating a lot of just vegan junk food. As opposed to just real food. And again, it probably would depend somewhat on what it's being made out of. So I don't want to like disparage. Yeah. Mostly my biggest concern would be excessive intakes and pushing out real food from your plate with a newer version of a hamburger or pizza. You should never ruin hamburgers or pizzas by trying to make them healthy. You should just eat hamburgers and pizzas from time to time as a treat, and then eat really good food whenever you're going to have really good food. That's a round way of me avoiding the question.
No, I think you answered it really well, and I think kind of everything in moderation, and anything that sounds too good to be true. There's necessary healthy skepticism that should follow it, I guess. But that probably doesn't mean it's bad if you're replacing your frozen chicken nuggets with a frozen vegetable based.
Yeah, I agree. And it's boring to say everything in balance, balanced diet or everything in moderation. I know that's not sexy and people want sexier than that. If you're being intellectually honest, most of the time that's the correct answer. I mean, it's not right. Nutrition can be very complicated, but most of us know that, Doritos aren't good and broccoli is pretty good for you. Like usually application and getting it into your diet is the bigger issue than figuring out what the perfect diet is for most people.
Yeah, and I think there's kind of this myth right now that I hear a lot from people where they just say it. They like assume, or maybe not assume, just the way they communicate about meat or animal product in general is like that it's innately unhealthy, unless they're a keto person.
Right.
But,
unless it's your camp. And then if it's your camp of people, it's innately great in every way.
Yeah, and there's nothing but I was wondering what your thoughts on that were, because overall, from my experience, a steak every once in a while is probably good and good for the soul.
I agree with that entirely. So to be fair, and where the research is, when you look at there's a scale, like an inflammation scale, and when you look at it, saturated fat is one of the highest things, up there with with straight sugar and enriched grains for causing inflammation. And the lowest things are things you would expect: legumes, fruits and vegetables, whole grains. High fiber things tend to be extremely low on that inflammation scale. So a lot of people who are very big on plant-based diets will point some of these things out. But that being said, the counter to that is there are plenty of cultures out there that live extremely long lives that are not meat free, that have meat in their diets. And what I usually talk to is the research on the blue zones. And for people who haven't heard of this, I highly invite you to look into it. Blue zones are the 5 places in the world that have been statistically shown to be the longest living cultures in the world. They literally live more than a decade longer than Americans, with a fraction of the disease rates, and the longest what's called disability-free life, which is where you're not broken down, you're not in pain, and all of them eat. What's that?
It said healthier eyes.
Yeah, healthier. They probably do, but when you look at those, they eat a lot of whole plant-based foods, but they do eat meat. And regularly, they just don't eat a ton of it. And so this is probably a talk for another night where we get into a deeper dive of keto versus plant-based and all the in-betweens with paleo and Mediterranean. But there's cultures out there where people are living longer, healthier lives, and they eat meat that is not taken out of their diet. But they do, with those cultures, where you also see is a whole lot of whole plant-based foods, including fruits, vegetables, and all that stuff that are alongside of it. Teasing out how big an issue that is can be just an argument for days. And when we get into that, one of my issues is that when nutritionists and scientists start having these debates, it starts to feel like you can't eat food without hurting yourself, like everything's going to kill you. And generally speaking, with America, that's not our issue. Like our issue is simply not that everybody's on all these perfect diets and are doing really, really well with their keto diet or the whatever diet. We're on the American diet. It's full of cheese puffs and Coca-Cola and excessive everything. So once we solve that problem, and people are eating a lot of really good food, lean meats, fruits and vegetables, beans and legumes, whole grains, when that is the base of the diet and everybody's living longer and on less medication, then we can have a debate over whether or not one is better than the other. But in every study that I see, the biggest issue is dropout rate. Like, we could talk about what's the better diet, man. I see it constantly. Whatever dietary system is put out there, the dropout rates, even in the ones we're paying people to be in, is super high. And the failure rates for diets here's a scary statistic. For people who do not have a health coach, a dietitian, a personal trainer, a chiropractor, a health professional helping them, the failure rate of a new workout program or dietary program is 98%. With a 2% success rate, really, the issue is us following through more than it is being on the perfect whatever. And unfortunately, we get into these debates and they're heated. They can be very angry over like what is the perfect way to eat. And I'm like looking around, like once you find that group of people, they're really tiny. Like everybody, the people we need to help, most of their issue is just trying to get out of the rat race of being super stressed and everything else and just getting into, and you can speak to this, Chris, because that same arguments are with like the perfect workouts, as if everybody's working out, 90 minutes a day all the time in the gym. And they need to figure out whether their functional training is perfectly. It's like, we need to just move more, just in general. Same thing with nutrition.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that comes down to the way we treat habits and habit formation, which is a conversation for a whole other time. So I think it's been about hour 10. So I was just wondering, let's just say like this. So do you have a final thought, Kirk? So what's your final thought? Like if you were to say, what's one thing that somebody can do right now?
Okay, so I have 2 final thoughts. The first one is, I still think that the vitamin D thing for eye health is one of the coolest things that I've heard in the past 5 years. I had no idea that was it, and I'm like, I want to go outside now just to make sure that my eyes stand it. So thank you, Dr. Cory, for letting us know that. That was pretty cool. But for me, it would be very simple. If you want to be healthy and lean for the rest of your life, probably all you need to do is make 2 fists and eat this much fruits or vegetables every time you eat, whether it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, or a snack. If you're going to eat, I don't care what it is, have this much fruits and vegetables, you're probably going to be healthy and lean on accident.
Yeah. Cory, what's your final thing? If you're going to say, like, what's the big things people need to do to take care of their eyes going forward?
Just based on today's conversation, I think the biggest thing is let's reduce screen time. for so many reasons. That near work, making us more nearsighted, and then just leading to a sedentary lifestyle. Let's get off the screens and let's move around more.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the same. I think that's my biggest thing is just keep moving. You know, I look at the body like it's like everything in our body is they want to be used and moved. Your joints want to move. Your muscles want to be loaded. Same with your eye. It wants to get used is kind of what I'm interpreting from you. If you're looking close all the time, the ability to look far is gonna, you know, it's gonna change. You're gonna lose it. And I think the same thing applies to your body. If you don't move your shoulder over this direction, you're never going to be able to move it over that direction anymore. So we gotta just keep our bodies moving and keep using them and stop sitting or standing all day. Just keep moving, I think would be the biggest thing for me. All right, guys, well, I'll just repeat. So that was a great conversation with Kirk Vidrine with V-Well Solutions and Dr. Cory Boudreaux with Focal Point Eye Care. They're two incredible people to talk to. I honestly really enjoyed this, just learning so much about both the immune system and eye health. I mean, these are topics that I think we all need to know about realistically if we want to take care of ourselves as we go forward.
Thanks for leading us, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
All right, we'll close it down.
We'll get off live.